You are listening to New Europe Institute 3C's 14 Talks podcast.
Hello, today we are starting a series of conversation about the 3C's initiative, its prospects for development and expansion to Eastern Europe. Today's discussion will be moderated by Leon Pinchak, a journalist from Belgrade, under auspices of Institute of New Europe. My guest today is Professor Liubov Zharova, PhD in economics, associate professor and head of the Department of International Economic Relations, Business and Management at Concordia Ukrainian-American University, based in Kiev. Currently, the professor teaches at the University of Economics and Humanities in Bielsko-Biała, Poland. The first country we will consider in the context of potential accession, or we might actually say intensification of cooperation, will be Ukraine, the country which is heroically defending itself against the brutal Russian invasion for a year and a half now. Dear Professor, I'd like to start with some reminder, namely in early September this year, the 8th Syria summit was held in Bucharest. I'm sorry, it's okay. Ukraine became an associate member of the initiative. We might have heard from Kiev that this means that Ukraine had gained access to all the tools developed within the framework of the initiative. However, a year ago at the Riga summit, a decision was made to create such a special new type of partnership, a participatory one, aimed simultaneously at all Eastern European countries seeking to join the initiative. Let's look at the dynamics of relations between the 3SI and Ukraine over this year. Could we actually say that within a year, Kiev and the 13 3SI countries have gotten to know each other and found common grounds for the development of their relations? In other words, is 3SI today a well-recognized regional project in Ukraine?
Actually, yes, thank you for the question. I also maybe start with the retrospective that like in 2015 and actually till the 2022, it was really highly discussed in Ukraine society, like the importance of this initiative. Then it was like the year when actual society was more concentrated on other problems, let me say so. And actually for now, it's like the new wave of interest and understanding the importance of 3C's initiatives. It doesn't mean that on the level of our governance and institution work, it was like some silence or some nobody forget about this initiative. But if we're talking about society, and support and discussion about all these problems and issues and possibilities of 3C's initiatives, actually now it's become again much more on the top, and we're coming back to this idea of importance that we used to discuss before 24th of February.
Okay, so we could say everything changed with the war. And since we
it was like disruptive, and actually the maybe first year or half of the year, like everybody was really focused on surviving, and it sounds not good, but really adopting to surviving in this new situation.
Okay, so there is another question rises. Is Ukraine now interested in cooperating with the 3SI? And could you please tell us what levels of cooperation it might be?
I actually, from my perspective, Ukraine now even more interested in cooperation that it used to be like before 24th of February. It's like the line that divided our lives before and after. And now we are talking about the reconstruction. It sounds like the main topic, and everybody like persuaded that we shouldn't like wait till the end of the war, because nobody knows when it will over and how it will look like. That's why we're talking about it. We need to survive, to reconstruct, rebuild the Ukraine now. And for these, Ukraine announced that we need to attract investments, we need more cooperation, and another problem that arises now, like once more again, this is infrastructure and possibility to export and import goods and services. And from this perspective, the cooperation with these countries is a huge opportunity, not only for Ukraine, like to join again this international trade and infrastructure project, but also for recovering and structuring these processes, because for now we face a lot of problems, not only Ukraine, but our neighbor countries, because of this logistic and trade. So I think that it's really helped not only recover and actively participate for Ukraine, but build more comfortable situation for everybody, from logistic and or actually like law issues for everybody in export, import, etc.
Could you please highlight what's holding up Ukraine's intensification with this through this initiative as a regional actor? I mean, is the 3SI really present in the context of the ongoing war? Maybe not in the Ukrainian society, but in the Kiev's governmental building. And if it's not, if 3SI is not being seen as a regional platform to provide, as you've mentioned, the import, the export, the infrastructures problems, why Kiev is, if it is, don't see a potential that Ukraine may give coming into the 3SI?
Okay, actually, I think that all these, let me say, institutional support, especially from our Minister of Economy, actually intensified after their decision that, hold on, in September. And now they are prepared like action plans, how it should be look like, because previously it was like no discussion about importance of the 3Cs initiatives, but efforts and support on this, not only legislative, but institutional level, how it should look like. We don't have in Ukraine like one point of view. It was just some kind of patchwork when every ministry or institution think about their own opportunities. And now Ministry of Economy, they like at least said, they declared that they will begin this process of systematization. Then it will be more visible for institutions and for citizens and also for business, because actually when we talk about this cooperation, it's not only about cooperation on the level of governments, it's also about like business. And for this we need to inform business what they can do, what they cannot do, what's the rules, what are the possibilities. And this communication, that's really the huge gap in Ukrainian society. And I hope that now this communication and information about this new, not new, but new for our business initiative, how it can be used, adopted, and how we can participate in this. And another point that now Ukraine going to start participate more actively in these infrastructure processes, develop the infrastructure. I know that now it's on the stage of like overall discussion how it should be look like.
Let's look at the topic of some problems. I mean, are the stocks being affected by what we see as conflicts issues between Ukraine and some countries of the region, particularly Poland? Does the deterioration of those relations with the country playing a leading role in the 3SI region affect perceptions of cooperation across the whole region?
Of course, it will influence, and actually, I think, and it's now like really articulated from the from Ukrainian part, from our diplomats, that they see like 3Cs like tool how we can actually overcome these problems and these conflicts, because it's understandable that now if we will try to solve the problems that have already arisen according to this, again, transportation, export, import operations, it's really difficult, and it's become even more confused according to the political situation and elections. Yeah, but actually all parties agree that we need to move on to going on with cooperation. And this 3Cs, it's like possibility to look from the new perspectives and understand, if we're talking about again about the transportation and logistics, how it could be organized in other ways that will be suitable for everyone, and for Ukraine and for other partners of 3Cs, of participants. And of course, it's like it's will be too pessimistic to think that everybody always will be agree about any solution and there is no place for conflict. I think it's just actually a part of evolution and development of these relations.
Let's move on to the topic of Ukraine's euro integration. Do you see any chances here for the 3SI to become a kind of, let's say, an advocate for Ukraine in the EU?
Yes, and I think that it's sounds pretty obvious. For me, it's I can think about this from different perspectives. The first, like we will have the support, like the state of those countries who are already part of European Union, yeah, and through this cooperation, we also moved to the fully implementation of regulation rules of European Union in Ukraine, just like because we will cooperate with these countries more tightly. From another perspective, we know that it's a long way to go before our European integration, and as you mentioned, it will be not earlier than 2030, and it's 7 years. It's still like piece of time, and for us, like Ukraine, it's possibility, like I don't know, like slide or step-to-step integration. The first, we cooperate with our neighbors, and it's for us possibility to be more included in these European Union policy and also institutional framework. So it's just first step. And if we will succeed in this, and we don't have like only conflicts, but we will have some success. That's the point from the previous answer, that we need to move to these new solutions. It's also be the good reason for those countries to support us, and for Ukraine said that we are ready to change. We can show our changes and show our readiness to go in line with European Union requirements.
Let's look more closer on those neighbor countries. I mean, the war has transformed Ukraine's bilateral relation in many countries in the region. For example, relations with Poland or even the entire eastern flank of NATO have gone to a new historic level. But on the other hand, they have clearly deteriorated with Hungary. Also, even before the full-scale Russian invasion, they could hardly be called favorable. Could you please briefly outline the front runners? I mean, the countries clearly aiming to incorporate Ukraine into the structures of the 3SI, as well as those countries in whose interests it may not be.
Actually, as you said, like the Baltic countries and Poland, it's like those who will support, and even those that we have now some difficult issues, yeah, that's in general our relationships become better. With Hungary, it's always be maybe not always, but in the nearest years, it will be some problematic issues, and Ukraine cannot like think about 100% support from the Hungary. And nevertheless, we all know that we are acting in like framework. We have pressure not only from inside the country but from other countries, and as Ukraine also under pressure, like we say positive pressure, like from European Union, also from the Poland. What should we do? How we can become better? Yeah, the Hungary also have the pressure. What they could do, what they cannot do. If they accept it, that they are like part of European Union, that means automatically that we accepted some common rules of play, and that means that nevertheless they will be forced to build some relationships in Ukraine. It's never be very close again in the nearest future, but nevertheless I think that we can talk about some like cooperation or some neutrality from other point of view on other countries, even if like Moldova also can have their reasons for cooperation, for being outside. But in general, as soon as these countries 12 countries who joined together in 3Cs initiative, they're working together, that means that they have the common aim. Yes, that declared it, and they all agreed that that's aim, that's values, they're common, they share them all. That means that Ukraine as a part and the new participant of this cooperation also declares that we share their values, and that's actually this ground on which we should build our cooperation. And that's also a possibility for diplomacy work, how to communicate with different countries. I think that's a clue that if those countries, 12 countries, in the first stage agreed that this is what we have in common, it's important, it's essential, and we share these values, that means that if you want to stay in this community, you should go along with these values. And that has again pros and cons, and for Hungary also it's something that they declared, so they need to keep their word. As soon as Ukraine, if we said that we are a part of this community, we have some obligation, and we also need to go in line with it.
Let's turn to the topic of regional security in the context of the ongoing war. I mean, given the dominance of NATO, but also of the European Union in some spheres, mainly in the context of the military political dimension of Ukraine's national security, what role do you think the 3SI can play? Is it an economic role, an infrastructure, or some different?
I think that it's for now it's more reasonable to focus on these economic and infrastructural interconnected, yeah, because it's something that on the top, and if we change and becomes a part of infrastructure, it's just give us new chances to develop or at least support our economy. If we're talking about this defense and NATO, yeah, and protection, that's not the only questions for 3Cs countries. Yeah, that's not actually the topic where they can influence. That means that here we are still in communication and actually playing with the rules of NATO. At the same time, we can think about initiatives, because when the 3Cs was actually created, these safety, economical and energy safety and independence, it was also the part of the discussion. And as when the military, it's a very important part of our safety of like a country now, but it's also should be supported with this food safety, environmental safety, energy safety, and these parts, it's really where this participation of Ukraine in 3Cs initiative can really help us.
You've mentioned before that the words has been spoken by Katerina Matronova, the EU's permanent representative in Kiev. She said that the most realistic date for Ukraine to join the EU is 2030, and I want to mix this speech with some different war scenarios. I mean, it's becoming more and more obvious that the Russo-Ukrainian war will not end soon. We see today that both sides of the war are preparing for an exhausting war. On the one hand, mobilizing the defense sectors, on the other, seeking support from allies. And assuming that this war will last for some years from now, what role do you see for 3SI in such a puzzle? Does the 3SI have such a long-term policy in the case of Ukraine?
Okay, so actually it's like a long-term aim for Ukraine. This is our goals for future, and this is actually imperative that show us where we are going. Yeah, that we are going to the European Union. That's why it's constant communications that are needed. They're important, and it's also not only about communication but transforming, because we need to meet all these requirements that have been agreed between European Union and Ukraine. So this is transformation, and it also will take time. Here we also understand that, so it's again that not top secret, that law will continue. Nobody knows for how long, but it's not now the 1 year. Yes, so it's all prognoses tell us about several years. And here, another point that we'll declare again with the Ukraine government and discuss on all levels, that we need to reconstruct Ukraine now, not waiting when we go just sink and will be somewhere down in the debt crisis and then started to do something. We should do something right now, because it's also the part, essential part that allows us to win or finish this war, I hope, with a win. That at the end, that means that we need partners, and it's so natural here to start to build these relations, more tight relations in all perspectives, in all spheres with our neighbors. And here the 3Cs initiative, it's just something that should really help us. It's like this first stage. And if we will still have like a country's support also in military, maybe we'll have some positive decision from the NATO, it all together will help us to go to the end with less losses and make our recovery maybe not shorter, but more successful and more efficient.
Let's summarize our conversation. We have discussed the issue of 3C's initiative recognition in Ukraine. We touched on Ukraine's bilateral relation with neighboring countries, and we know what role 3SI can play in the security sector and in Ukraine's euro integration process. So what's your view about the chances for the engagement of Ukraine within the 3SI? Is it really possible during the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war?
I'm quite optimistic. I understand that it's never will be like easy way. Yeah, that we always have some partners with whom we will have a lot of issues and problems, and maybe we will never come to the common conclusions, but nevertheless we'll have those who always guaranteed us some support. I think that for Ukraine it's really a chance to be a part of this initiative, and it's chance not only for developing but solving those conflicts that existed now, just developing these again logistic and economic part. And also I can think that it can be again, so it's not only from perspective of Ukraine, it can be also a good thing for economic development for another countries, because it's always about cooperation. They have like faster access for initiative in Ukraine, because now Ukrainian government also said about some guarantees that they will give to businesses who will enter and started their business in Ukraine. And if we have this common infrastructure project and access to investments, it's also will be a chance for businesses from other 3Cs countries to receive their profit and start their businesses, or at least new initiative, develop their business on territory of Ukraine, maybe not on whole territory, but at least at this part that for them will be looks reasonably safe.
So let's hope this happens and Ukraine will fully defend itself. Thank you very much for this interview, Mr. Professor. My guest was Professor Liubov Zharova. We have discussed the prospects for future relations between the 3SI regional organization and Ukraine. And please stay tuned for the new podcast featured by the Institute of New Europe. Thank you. Goodbye.